Hello and welcome back to the Soul Sync podcast. I'm psychic medium Jason Paul. Now, there are parts of ourselves that we learn to quieten, sometimes very early on. The part that wants to create, the part that wants to play, the part that wants to do something simply because it feels good, without knowing whether we'll be any good at it. That time when you was a child, when you would just literally go and play without fear, judgment, or expectation. And then somewhere along the way, life does get serious, doesn't it? We learn about right and wrong, success and failure, what we're good at, what we're apparently not good at, what other people think of us, and this little voice starts appearing, doesn't it? That's rubbish. You can't do that. You're going to make a fool of yourself. What if you get it wrong? And the funny thing is, we start believing it, don't we? Now, I've been thinking about this a lot recently in my own life because I'm at this strange point where, in many ways, I can decide what comes next. And I am so grateful to have the ability right now to do that. And I'm really focusing on gratitude because I feel that gratitude really is the key to create what you want in life. So I've stepped away from the business that defined such a huge part of my life, and I found myself asking a question that sounds incredibly simple, doesn't it? What do I actually want to be now? Not who have I been, not what am I good at because I've done it for 15 years, not what does somebody else expect Jason to do next. Who do I want to be? And that has made me realise just how many little boxes we put around ourselves. I've always thought of myself as a creative person, I tell you that. I used to want to be an actor. I was in theatre classes in the evening at a gay theatre school when I was growing up in Kent. And I was a magician as a teenager. I loved music, I loved storytelling. And yet, give me a blank canvas and a paintbrush, and within approximately 17 seconds, I've got an art critic living inside my head. We often judge ourselves like rotten, don't we? We judge something before we've even allowed it to become anything. And I think we do exactly the same thing in mediumship. We receive an impression, and before we've had chance to breathe, we're analysing it. Is that right? What does that mean? Is that my imagination? Should I say it? What if that's a no? And suddenly something that started as a beautiful, subtle experience has become an exam. So this conversation with my next guest, medium Shelley Youell, we talk about spirit art, we talk about trusting yourself, we talk about surrender. It's a really beautiful conversation. And yes, enjoy, my darlings. Shelley, firstly, welcome, my darling, to the Soul Sync.
It's fabulous to be here, Jason. Lovely to see you as always.
Oh, it is indeed. So I must say, we were having a good old natter and a gossip before we even got going, which I'm sure we'll do at the end as well.
Probably, yes. Yeah.
Well, it's lovely to have you on. So firstly, thank you for coming on, because you have been on the podcast before. Tell people who don't know you a bit about you, because you're a fabulous medium, firstly.
Well, I do my best, which is what I teach with all students as well.
As we should all do, yes.
That's all we can do. We're human at the end of the day. So obviously I'm a spiritualist, medium, and artist, very, very passionate about what I do in all aspects of it, you know, and obviously that incorporates healing as well, empowering others. I love it all, to be honest, Jason. I demonstrate, I travel for work, in person, online, you know, anywhere I can be that can be for the spirit, really. I just love it. I really do.
Well, it's all about the spirit at the end of the day, isn't it? That's what we are here to be a vehicle for. And there's something about being in service, isn't there?
Yes, I say being of service is the greatest gift, and it's not always the easiest, but it is the greatest gift. And, and what I love to see is people being empowered. There's so many times that we come across, me, like many, struggled with self-doubt, confidence. And if you can be a part of giving them a little bit of confidence, a bit of a boost to empower them, not just actually, it's fabulous to be a part of it. I could go on, just to help people. It's not always about really the spirit world. It's about people in the here and now as well, and the self-development aspect and helping people, because we've all been through our stories, haven't we? We've all had our experiences, and and it shapes us. And sometimes our thought patterns aren't always the best for us.
They're not. And I feel even when we look back at the past, we can look through very different colours of lenses, can't we? Sometimes the rose tinted ones, perhaps. That seems to be a favourite of mine. I've got a certain lens, Shelley, where the grass looks greener as well. Sometimes I don't know how to get that one off.
Well, sometimes that sounds more like a positive one anyway. But yeah, I think sometimes, it's interesting because a workshop I was doing yesterday, and the thread is, I just need more confidence. I've got so much self-doubt, and I've been there, done that. And I'm not saying I don't experience it now, because that's the human part of us, isn't it? And, and it's trying to bring that to see the real ability within you, the real essence of who you are, because we are all of the spirit. And of course, we're perfect in our imperfections. Let's put it that way.
Well, I think mediumship has given me a lot. I came into this on a search really for proof that there is more to life than we, can realize. And for me, the spirit world was that the proof that I needed. And there was I would say there was a threshold I set on my, the evidence I needed. It was almost like I was building a case file in some ways, it was, because, I didn't accept it easily. And I would say that I never fully accepted it until I started doing it. But then the journey of doing it and discovering it and unfolding it, heals me as I go through, because you have to really work on yourself. But there is something in the way we doubt ourselves. I've doubted my ability in so many things, and even at the interesting crossroads that I find myself in at the moment, where I'm on day 2 of unemployment. I keep laughing as I say it because, it's funny, because I've never been, my work ethic is insane, but the only thing that I'm now currently doing is mediumship.
You're not unemployed really then, are you?
Well, no, I'm not. Do you know what? It's just me. I'm just being dramatic about it. But even at this juncture where I've built a company to a multi-million pound level, don't get me wrong, many times the wheels have almost came off. I've had to go and glue them back on. But it's been a real journey, and it's actually very emotional. But even at this juncture now, I could do anything. Like I could have a recruitment agency biting my arm off to start tomorrow. You still get the ego bloody creep in, and it still wants to say, you have to train it, you have to work on it. And I'm going through a big cord cutting process at the moment, Shelley, of working who the old Jason was and who the new Jason is. The new Jason doesn't drink half a bottle of red wine on a school night, There's certain qualities there. But I'm deciding what I want new Jason to become. But self-doubt, it's a problem in mediumship, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. And I think, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's called we care.
Oh, we do. And we care so much.
Yeah.
And interestingly, caring about it, really caring about it, and there's going to be people listening to this thinking, but yes, I do really care about it. That's because I'm there's such a respect there for what I'm doing, the sacredness of connecting to the spirit world. But the caring I feel now is what gets in the way, because that creates an expectation we place on ourselves of what we feel we must be in terms of delivery or whatever. So before you've even started the connection, you're sitting there probably in quite a tense state, your energy's going up and down and I'm sort of sitting there going, like, come on now, do a good job. You need to, don't let the imagination come in, right? There's so much going on, isn't there? So there's a lot to it.
Definitely the psychology of it and the power of the mind and how we think about ourselves and our mediumship is vital, because we can empower or disempower ourselves just in a thought. We don't need anybody else to judge us. We do it all by ourselves, and
it's the power of thoughts, even just one thought. I only really started understanding the power of thought and intention, really understanding it probably only in the last couple of years, because I thought I understood, but the thoughts that we have are, literally painting our future, painting our reality, sort of putting the lens in front of you of how you view the life that surrounds you. We all perceive our life differently. So it's very important. So you have come on today to talk about spirit art. And because most people firstly imagine mediumship as words, that they're names, memories, feelings, but spirit doesn't necessarily communicate in sentences. So talk us through spirit art and what that is to people firstly.
How long's a bit of string now? You've asked me a big question.
Well, yes, I've asked you one of those typical soul sync, Jason, very open-ended questions. You see what I've done there, Shelley?
Well, it's interesting because I embraced my mediumship before I even delved into the aspect of spirit art. And what I love, because I am on the dyslexic spectrum, not bad, but I am. So words don't always, ironically, we're doing a podcast, but I've got better. But words, or the written words, not so easy. Give me a paintbrush or a pencil, I can express it without words. And I find that, but let's just put aside the spirit eye, if you don't mind, for a moment. When we look at working with colour, and I'm talking about put it onto paper or canvas or paints, whichever way you want to look, it's a self-expression. And sometimes it's healing. I didn't know when I started out with exploring the art side of it that there was things called art therapy. Sorry, but I didn't, many years ago. And colour therapy, I mean, I know that they've all got an aspect of healing and an energy and so on. But I didn't go down that route. So it was quite interesting how I come into it. And I learned through my own soul's expression and then obviously the guidance of the spirit world, how that sometimes there's certain emotions, maybe experiences, good, bad, or indifferent, that we don't know how to process. And we can't always put them into words. And sometimes we don't want to have to justify or try and explain to somebody what we're feeling. But you can put it down on paper and just express it in colour. And how you put the colour on and that in itself. But I'm not a colour therapist, not an art therapist.
Well, no, I can understand that, because even, if you've gone through something traumatic or there's something that's happened to you, which more than likely that's the reason you've arrived at a therapist's door, words can carry, for instance, if someone is going to a therapist because of something that happened to them in their past and, they're ashamed to say that they're addicted to something, words can have labels, and words are very powerful, and words can carry shame. So it takes a lot of judgment away, doesn't it? By
it does.
And I guess I've had some therapy in the past. Probably could do with a load more of it, to be fair. And And I
Well,
can
I'm sure many of us could, Jason.
It's expensive, isn't it? It is expensive. I was seeing a lady, a very nice lady. It's quite funny, actually. It's about a year ago. I started to see a therapist just to address some of what had happened, because I felt that I hadn't really in my life ever stopped to address a lot of the trauma. And she said to me on the first session, "Well, why is it that you've arrived here?" And I said, "I don't really know, to be quite honest." I said, "I'm hoping you can help me find out." But there was definitely something in colour for therapy, because I can understand that, especially with children, I think.
That's where I was going to say, I weren't going to interrupt you, but sometimes children don't have the words, the vocabulary of the understanding, but they can illustrate it in symbology and in art. It's a way of expression. So in that aspect, it really saddens me. I've talked about this before in the podcast, I'm sure, that many people go, "Oh, I can't draw for toffee," or I can draw stick men, or or I'm not creative. And it really does sadden me, because I go, but we are creative. Our mind's creative. Mediumship in itself is creative. And the mind, and we are part of creation. We're all the essence of spirit. So it's all creative. So we all are part of that. And, we've all had something said to us at some point in our life. Excuse me if some say, "Well, no, I haven't," but many of us have, "Oh, you're no good at that," or "You can't draw," or "You're not creative," or,
Oh, yes.
yeah.
Well, we do.
It sticks, whether it's childhood, adult. "No, you can't do this. You're no good at it." And please, I'm not trying to discredit anybody, but we've had those experiences where we've even berated ourselves and said it. And then we never do it again, because we think, "Well, I'm no good at it, so I'm not going to do it." And I find that really sad.
It is sad, because it depends. Lots of people in their childhood, they will have, a parent that gives them tough love and says, "You must do this and you must achieve this." And they're quite hard on themselves. And that kind of sticks. And it's, I want to say right now, if you are listening to this and feel that I can't do something, yes, you can. Firstly, I want to challenge you on and really look and understand, why is it that you're feeling that way? Because if you're going to say, "Oh, I'm too old at 40 to start learning the guitar," what, have you not got two hands? Are you what's the problem there? We limit ourselves, don't we? But
we do.
And what we believe about ourselves to be true a lot of the time isn't true at all. It's just we've got into this way of thinking about ourselves, haven't we?
Well, it's learned behaviour, isn't it, as well, and learned opinions and expressions. And I don't know about you, Jason, but coming into not only mediumship, but let's call it spirituality, it's like undoing all of that conditioning.
It's like you're unlearning.
Yes. And it's like not conforming, maybe, if that's the right word. And it's and it does make you look at self. And I know we're talking about art, but that still mirrors onto that. It's about bringing out the best in all of us, but also making a difference in this life, as well as obviously when we're in the spirit world. But but there's many experiences we've all had that have impacted us, that are quite deep rooted sometimes. And I find that the simple expression of, without words, putting it onto paper, you don't have to be an artist to do that. I've had no art training. Spirit art, God bless some lovely tutors I know that are spirit artists, that when I was a student, it just never kind of happened. And I just went, "Oh, okay, it weren't meant to be." So, but I admire them and I admire their work and have great respect. But the spirit world taught me. And
they're the greatest teachers, aren't they, Shelley? They are the greatest.
Of course, they are our main teachers. And, yes, all right, I will admit that artistic ability is there within me, because when I was at school, if I was asked to concentrate, which we don't always, especially as teenagers, I could do it.
You would engage in certain conditions.
Exactly. And
a lot of great artists, they can be very divish, can't they? They don't want people to see their beauty of their art. Was that you, Shelley?
Yeah. But, I never pursued it. I suppose going into hairdressing was a creative endeavour with my career, with what I did there. And I did makeup consultant, blah, blah, blah. But, it never left me. But the way I work, because obviously bringing it back to your original question about spirit art, I've never worked in that way before. It opened a whole new doorway for me. And the spirit world has taught me, the shapes of faces, and if you want to do portraits, of course, which was one thing I procrastinated at the beginning doing. Obviously I would look at different techniques, how to work with different materials. That's not the spirit world. That's me doing my research.
Well, yeah, you need to understand what paints are going to work.
Exactly.
You need to give the spirit world a fighting chance.
Yeah, because the more we get the knowledge and understanding, the more we've got the reservoir of knowledge for them to work with, as we all know that in whatever capacity it's going to be. So, and I would just sit with the materials around me, whichever they were, acrylics at one point, and I would invite the spirit world, and I would sit in the power and blend with them, and then we'd start. And I'm not saying they took over my hands or, overshadowed me, anything like that, but they would certainly inspire me. There has been times where it's where I've been not aware of what I've been doing. My eyes have been open, but I've been in such a level of altered state. It's not just been that creative level. That's not the word I was looking for, but, it went deeper. And there's times like Friday night, I was doing portrait, and it was like somebody just knocked my hand on this drawing of this nose of this gentleman. I was like, oh! And then obviously it was evidential. So it was like, that was interesting, because it was like, I don't do that. So.
Well, I've watched Medrado. I've actually got one of his paintings in my bedroom, and it was fascinating to watch him doing the trance art, because each piece was timed, and I've got in my bedroom what's the artist's name now? Blimmin' forgotten it. It's so funny. I've got a Monet, that's it, a Monet. So basically, Monet was one of the main artists that he brings through from the spirit world. And I always say to my mum about that painting, to get a real Monet in real life, God knows, millions and millions, but I prefer mine because Spirit Monet comes back to paint for love, not ego, he said to Medrado once. Yeah. And there is an energy in that picture. And even when it was painted, actually, Medrado was telling me that his paintings do sometimes fade over time because of the healing energy they're giving out. And at the particular time I bought it, I said to a friend of mine, I'm a bit worried in case I wake up one day and it's just a blank canvas with how stressful things were with my business at the time. Yeah. But it's fascinating to watch trance art, because to do something like that with his eyes closed in a minute and a half, just, blew my mind, really.
Yeah, it does. It is mind-blowing. But it fascinates me. I said sometimes, like I said, I'm in such an altered state when I'm working. I'm aware, but I'm not aware. And it's not until afterwards that I go, oh, I just did that. It really does blow my mind. And there was one I did, and I just, right, I've got to do that. And I don't question it. I allow the influence of the spirit I don't question which guide, which person, unless obviously it's for somebody and that's what the intention is. And I did these swirls, and I hadn't absorbed it because I'd done it, and then I went off doing something else. And then a friend saw it, and they went, have you seen the faces in? And I went, no, because I've not gone back to it. And then when I went back, I went, my goodness, I didn't, and there was no brush stroke. It was not created by me. And it was just through it was a sponge applicator. And I went, you can't deny those faces. Sometimes.
Well, I actually feel mine keeps changing. I'm sure that there's a face in it now, which I wasn't there when I first bought it. So I feel something has changed even energetically in that picture.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah.
Because it started off, I felt my one as it's like a green forest scene, and I really felt the energy one day change in the photo. This sort of face almost arrived in it. I thought, oh, I wonder what that means.
And that's what blows my mind. You know, even as the spirit artist, the energy of the painting or the drawing, whichever you're doing, and like you said, they change and the colours, and then you go, that wasn't there before. How interesting is that? So, and that takes me then to the pioneers of it's gone out of my mind now, precipitated art, you know, where there would be, it would change on the canvas. So I'm not touching on that fully correct, but, you know, I when you ask me to define it, I don't think we can, Jason. You know, that we all have our own perceptions of it and what we think it should be. I mean, it's influenced by the spirit world, obviously.
Well, I don't even think it's helpful in some ways to say spirit art, because even trying to define it puts it into a box, and it's the ultimate form of expression. And there is a magic in them, because even with Medrado, he paints with oils, I believe, and you cannot put oil straight on top of another oil. But it is said that he uses a layer of ectoplasm to spirit world do in order to make the paintings work, because it wouldn't work in any other way because they'd bleed. So there is a magic in each piece, and it is the spirit world coming through. I almost kind of think in some ways with my own mediumship, and I didn't realize this until recently, it always starts for me a connection with a face. And I had points in my development where I used to think to myself, I saw that as a limiting thing, because I'd think, oh, why can, you know, I'm almost can't move beyond the face, I felt at times. But it turns out, Eileen Davis was saying to me the other day, well, actually, not many people do get that. So, but my problem is, Shelley, I get a paintbrush, and as soon as I start, the analytical mind comes in. Oh, that doesn't look very good the way I've painted that bit there, you know. So the key to it is being able to move into that state, isn't it?
We'll be right back.
If you're interested in mediumship, I'd love to invite you to something a little bit special. On Friday, the 28th of August at 7:30 p.m. UK time, I'm hosting a free online evening of mediumship with the wonderful Nicola Farmer. It'll be an evening of spirit communication, love, laughter, and connection. It's completely free, live on Zoom, and absolutely everybody is welcome. You'll find all the joining details in the episode notes, and I'd love to see you there.
Yes, it is. Just like you do when you're doing your evidential communication, for example. You know, the analytical, the conscious left brain is always going to try and interfere, and it does. But it's just being free. You see, I'm sure I may have said this in a previous podcast, and apologies if I've repeated myself.
Oh, Shelley, that was ages ago. Say it again, please, my dear. Yes,
I don't even remember what I said in it, to be fair.
No, me neither, to be fair.
But, you know, how I was dabbling with art and my perfection, because I am a perfectionist, and typically...
Well, that's the problem, isn't it, perfectionist?
Yes, definitely. It's a detriment to anybody listening to this, whatever form of mediumship, spiritual, what you're doing, that perfectionism, there's no place for it. Being, you know...
It stops people even getting started, perfectionism.
Yes,
I am a Virgo, typical perfectionist, and I want everything to be just right. But, you know, there is a beauty in that, but you need it. The problem with being a perfectionist is it stops most people even ever getting started. Do you know why? Because the inner critic in their mind says to them, oh, it's not going to be very good. You know, the first time someone picks up a guitar, oh, it sounds awful. But then you think to yourself, well, of course it does. It's the first time you've ever picked it up.
Exactly.
So, the inner critic needs to go. No one likes a critic, even restaurants. No one likes a critic. It's negative energy straight away. A critic is someone in the ego. Go away, thank you. We don't need you.
You know what
here.
I call it? I call it the naughty elf.
Yes, it is the naughty elf.
It's the naughty elf going, you're rubbish, you can't do this, blah, 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 blah. And I always say to people, flick it off. All you do
flick it off.
Yeah.
Every now and then, it will help you. The ego is there, this little elf, to try and save us from the saber-toothed tiger running at us. And it wants to keep us safe. But what it does is it makes us live our lives, I think the left-hand brain, through the lens of fear most of the time. And you was even saying, before we got started, about me keep looking up to the right, weren't you?
I was, yes. Do you want me to discuss that now?
Oh, yes, because I think it makes an important point about sides of the brain, in mediumship and being aware of that.
Oh, totally. Yeah. So, okay, for the lovely listeners, I was listening to these podcasts I listened to, and they're not always about spirituality, but I'm fascinated about psychology and our body language. And I'm not saying I'm the best at it. I just find it really interesting. And like I said, it's all a reservoir of knowledge anyway for our work. But it's an interest of mine. And this CIA, he's a retired CIA spy, talks about body language when somebody is like being deceptive or not telling the truth. Now, in this instance, what I'm about to say, it's not about that. But he talks about if you're asked to say what you did yesterday, most people will look to the left because they'll draw upon memory of what they did yesterday. But if they want to fabricate what they did and they don't want to be completely honest, they often look to the right, which is the right side, is the creative side of the brain. And I had a moment going, how interesting, because whenever I do any spiritual work, I always look up and to the right. And that's the right side of the brain. Now, I'm not fabricating anything, but I'm always spirit led with any of my spiritual work. And that to me was like a real calling card. It was a real ka-ching moment, that just shows that I'm not drawing upon memory or but I'm drawing upon the influence of the spirit world to influence me in whatever I'm doing, regardless teaching, evidential, but always. And one of my other friends, she went, oh my God, I do that too. I said, isn't it fascinating? And it wasn't the CIA spy saying that we'd be seen as, not telling the truth, but they were saying it with a collection of other body language that could show that in an interrogation and so on. But I just moved it on to do with the spiritual side. And I thought, how interesting.
Well, it is how we even got talking about it was you noticing that I keep looking off to the right. Yeah. And I do that, especially in my mediumship, because I've become an expert, and I was saying this to you before we got recording, in body language, because I do something which is called masking, and I never even knew what this was until a couple of years ago. And I was watching this documentary on BBC called Inside My Autistic Mind. See, I'm even doing it now. I'm looking up to the right, because looking at you right now is making me, because I'm having to draw on right now what I want to say. So anyway, before I lose my train of thought, I was watching this documentary, and it was all about autistic people and how they perceive the world. Obviously, they're very, very, very sensitive. And there's certain characteristics of this one person in the documentary where he would rock, and a lot of autistic people do that. And I think it's like a self-soothing thing because of how they're perceiving the world. Now, I have developed since a child. I've been told so many times from a very young age I don't pay attention. So I developed, and so many ADHD people do, is we do that thing where we pretend at school that we're paying attention and whatever. Anyway, you fast forward my life to where I am now, 39 years old, having been a police officer, having done recruitment. I've got a built-in bullshit detector, and it's very sensitive, especially when money's involved, when there's a deal at work, that would twitch. I'd also say I've got a gay sensor on top, a gaydar. I don't know. That's just one I can't tell. My mum's got a very good one, actually. She's very good, because she has a thing, trying to find me a nice husband. You see, Shelley, we still haven't got there yet, but I've become an expert body language, but that's become a problem in my mediumship. And it was one of these barriers I had to overcome, because I'd be doing a reading, looking at you, caring so much, but I want to do it right for you. And so much as even just your eyebrow just twitching, I'd read that. But this is because the thing is, it was a good skill. It served me so well in recruitment, brokering, closing deals. But then in mediumship, it was a problem. So I've had to start to learn to look off to the right. And at first I used to think, I'm not going to look straight past the person because that's a bit rude. Now I feel like I'm building the power. I don't even need to look as I'm raising the power, Shelley, you see.
Yeah. I just found it really interesting. It just, to me, validated, not that I needed that validation, but in a scientific way, I suppose, if you want to look in a psychology aspect, that it just shows that I'm working with a creative brain because I'm on that side, and I often do it. And yeah.
Well, that's sensitive people. We're sensitive to body language. And I would almost say that I can read so much into someone, because I was a psychic, and I've been a psychic since a very young age, but I've never even knew what a psychic was until years later. But I can read into people straight through them. And if someone is lying to me, that's why I've had to go through this almost process of sort of cutting people off in my life as I've grown, because, there becomes a disalignment and you can see through things. And it's also, when you've got an ADHD brain, you're an overthinker. So, there's a lot going on there. There is a lot going on there.
Definitely. But I feel as well, art for you would be really good.
Well, do you know what? I did go through a little period where I said I'm going to do a lot of painting, and then I bought, typical me, I bought the paints, I bought the brushes, I bought the right things, I bought the everything I could possibly need, an easel. I'm ready to go, but it hasn't yet flowed. But you said something interesting at the start, which is learning the techniques. What I need to do is probably just go on a very basic art course to understand what I'm doing with the materials, because I was, I had my dabber out and all sorts, and there was paint flying everywhere. The first time I painted, honestly, half of it was around my house afterwards.
I usually wear half of it. Trust me. I have an itch and then I've got paint across my face, or, But what I was going back, because we've gone on where it naturally needs to flow, but going back, what I did when I was going into this expression, I knew in that art needed to come in, but I didn't know how. And I was in that perfectionist brain, which is that led us into that conversation, which was relevant, that I got that spirit went, put the brush down. And I kept getting that, put the brush down.
Oh, doesn't sound very encouraging, does it, Shelley?
No, it doesn't. And in the end, like a petulant child, I mean, I'm not like that really, but I was like exasperated a bit, and I just put the brush down. I went, right, what are we going to do now then? And I said it out loud. It's like, I need something to put it onto the canvas, a spatula, a brush, or sponge, and then I started working with my fingers, which anybody who knows my story has probably heard that. And that took me way out of my perfectionism. And it was so liberating. Mm-hmm. It was fun. But you see, I couldn't be a perfectionist. You cannot, because it's so organic and raw. And I just started to move the paint on the canvas.
Oh, that's so interesting. I've never thought of using my finger. Yeah. I spent so long picking my brush. By the time I've picked my perfect brush, I've probably wasted 20 minutes.
Yeah. So, and a lot of my paintings, not at the minute I've had time to do many, because anybody wants to know, but I'm in the process of moving. So a lot of things are packed. But I often start a painting with my fingers now.
At least you don't have to wash your brushes at the end either.
Yeah, no, that is one thing. But what I do recommend, if anybody wants to play around doing it with their fingers, I would recommend gloves.
Yes.
Because there's times in early days, certain colours, because that's what I work. I haven't worked with oils, funny enough, but acrylics, because I can just dab my hands in the water and I can make them a bit watercolory and water them down and do whatever I want. But that's just one of my go-tos. But some colours stain. And I've gone, when I used to work my hairdressing, I went to work with bright turquoise palms, honestly, and purple. And I went, I've got to succumb to gloves because I cannot do that, all the time. So, but the brush comes in now, but I get it now. It had to, this is my opinion and expression of it. It was like breaking me out of that perfectionism so they could have an influence on me more. And it did.
I understand that because even with the brush, you can go on YouTube and there is so much to even using the brush. And, if you start watching the Bob Ross, very quickly you realise just how important brush technique is. It's all in the brush. So, when I've started painting, I've got very obsessed with the brush and what brush it is. But I'm going to try that with my fingers. It feels, even the fact of doing it, it feels quite liberating, doesn't it? Getting stuck in there with the paints.
Yeah, it brings out that inner child, like a child would. You give them some paints and they put the handprints on things. It really is freeing anyway, because we're so conformed in life, aren't we, really? No disrespect to anybody, but we are. We go through life and we have to fit in certain boxes. Well, creativity breaks out of all of those rules. When you look at artists, okay, certain artists, they'll do a beautiful country scene and it'll be very contemporary, and it'll look like a photograph and amazing. I admire that. But then you get the other artist that does it so abstract and it's in the view and the perception of the artist. So there is, in my opinion, no rules. Why should there be?
There is no rules. And we it's all about the boxes that we put ourselves in.
Yeah.
My granddad said to me, because a little while ago, he's a guide of mine. He's a lovely guide. And he's also comes through a lot to want to give me advice in readings. And it's something we all do in life, which is we'll read a book or we'll watch someone online and then we deem that person is the expert and then we surrender our power. So my granddad said to me, look, Jason, you are not made for boxes. You need to break out of all molds, all boxes. Yeah. But we put ourselves in these. We have to be like this. And unfortunately, we're, even at a young age, the moment we're born into this world, we're at a disadvantage because we're given a name which makes us separate from everyone else and everything. And then we get told that we have to be like this in society and we have to do that. So we're programmed from a very young age to understand the boxes that we need to tick to be successful in life. So what we do is we're trying to fit within them, and creativity doesn't work like that. Mediumship doesn't work like that, which is why I get annoyed when you hear mediumship teachers say, get the name, get this, get that. Well, that's being in a box.
It is, yeah. And like you said, it stems from early doors because of how we've been
conditioned.
Yeah, conditioned, influenced to conform, and for me, it's been one of those challenges. And I don't deny that perfection head's still there, but I'm a lot better. And then if I get really like that, I won't even touch my art because I'll get so cross with myself because I get, no, not cross, actually, not now, frustrated, but that would be inclined then. Oh, I have done it. Yeah. I just being reminded myself that I'll be like too organized, even with my hands. And then all of a sudden I just go, no. And then I laugh and I go, now I'm free. Come on, spirit, let's see what we're going to unfold.
It's different, isn't it? Even to doing a reading, because if you're doing a reading, you've got the time that you're doing it. So you sort of prepare, okay, now I'm in it. The art requires you to really get out of the way, especially if you're doing it by yourself, because it's a very different form of expression and state you're getting into. And it's very much, I could just imagine the little elf on the shoulder. Oh, that doesn't look like a very good colour to use first of all, and all of that chipping away.
Oh, yeah. But, there's times, especially when the weather's reasonable, not that, again, I've had time at the moment, I'll take my easel out in the garden.
Oh, yes.
And I'll put my earpods in. Sometimes I just want to listen to nature. Sometimes I want to just listen to some fabulous music that's uplifting. And I'm throwing the paint at the canvas and it on and, and in your own soul expression, it's it's so healing, it's invigorating, it's wonderful. But there is times that then I will go in the silence, just listen to being the power of that creative power, of nature, the spirit. And then the words come to what.
Do you know what it feels like as you're talking there? It feels like that act of painting is a release. It's a release of emotion, because I think too often in life how often do most people suppress emotions? You've either got to express them, sort of work through them, not just leave them absolutely bottled up. And I must say, a few weeks ago, before I left my business, I took we always do a fun social every quarter, and we all went on one of these painting experiences, and it was a very hot day like it is today. And the guy led us in, it was in a warehouse. He sort of took us through the first bit, which was almost like a sort of fairly nice gallery, put us in all our stuff. Then he took us to the art chaos room, which was just paint everywhere you can imagine. And I started getting my paint. I was splatting it. I was firing it. The silly thing was, I'm very immature in these types of situations. Before you know it, people were flinging paint at each other. It started getting silly. Oh, and the funny thing then was he had a neon paint, and he said, "Oh, do you want me to turn the lights off and the neon lights on so you can see the neon paint?" And I said, "Okay then." And then I looked over, and our 19-year-old apprentice had got neon boobies painted on her by someone. And I thought, right, this is getting out of hand now. This is starting to get silly. But it was very liberating. Yeah. And I felt good afterwards, having expressed myself with that paint.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. How did you feel afterwards? Because you would. It's great. You're not conforming. You don't have those expectations on yourself. You're just having some fun. And that's what I often encourage with people, with art, with mediumship, of any form, is, enjoy it. Not endure. Try not to put such pressure on your shoulders. Yes, all right, we value what we do. And of course we want to do well. Yes, some could say from the ego, but that's not just that. It's because we want to make a difference. That's what we're about. We're empathic and so on. But enjoy it. I must have, as a student, sometimes looked like I was in pain, trying to, Spirit, help me, And it's like, we
do that because we care, and it happens to us in all aspects of our life, because even in the act of wanting to do a good job, that's what, can be the problem. You've just got to be in the present and have fun with it. It's even like me learning the guitar at the moment. I've gone for a bit of a sticky patch where I haven't picked it up too much, but I'll sit there and I'll say, okay, I'm going to practice now. It's practice time. And there's a sort of almost like a tenseness. And then one day someone said to me, "Why do you keep saying the word practice?" I said, so one day I can play it. And he said to me, "Why don't you just play it?" And I thought, that's very clever what happened there. The expectation has been removed from me. Definitely. And even in the act of wanting to paint because it's fun, what state are you in energetically, I guess, is the question.
Well, that brings us back to the psychology again, doesn't it? About you and how you're feeling about yourself and your mediumship and what you're doing. The pressures we put on ourselves. As soon as we say we can't, we don't, we won't, excuse me, you won't, because you've set that intention.
Yes, or what we'll do is, like, a favour to mine is I'll keep saying to people around me that sometimes I'm going to do something, and then, but the act of saying it makes me feel better, because yes, I am going to address this, but I'm almost lying to myself, because deep down within me, I know I'm not going to do that particular thing. But we do this to ourselves in life. Yeah, we do. And now I use the Mel Robbins 5-second rule, and I say to myself, right, if I'm going to cycle my bike, that's come into my mind. That's what I want to do. Okay, 5, 4, 3, to get up the chair. Right, you're doing it now. Because if I don't, I won't do it, and you have to find these little tricks with yourself, don't you?
Yeah, you do. But you see, going back to the art aspect of it,
I love the fact you keep just taking us back to the art.
Because I know that's why you want me on here, I can talk about lots of stuff, but it's all interconnected anyway, isn't it? It's all very relevant.
Yes.
But, I recommend to people, it's not about being an artist. It's about expression. It's about putting colour onto paper, scribble it on, have a moment, sit in the power of your own soul and go, I need to express and express through colour without questioning the colours you're picking. Just grab the colours, be aware of how they feel as you're putting them onto the paper or how you're putting them onto the paper. Because if you're a colour you don't really like, you might scribble it really hard. Why? Because you're expressing maybe an anger, a trigger. I'm not obviously a psychologist or a counsellor, but allow that expression out. Why should we have to do a tree that looks just like a tree? Why can't we draw it pink, purple and blue? And does it have to be a certain shape? Allow it. I encourage students as well to, with practice, yes, all right, learn techniques because that will help you with different materials and help you refine it. But otherwise, sit in the power of the spirit. Your art materials there. Nobody else is judge and jury. There is no expectations. Just a liberation and a freedom and a space you've created for yourself and that to blend with the spirit world. Come create with me. Let's see what we can bring. And then not judge it harshly.
I'm so excited. You know what? You've made me want to do one because I feel that I need to get painting to process a bit of what's happened. I must say, I'm already feeling like that I want to be doing a bit of scribbling. So I think that's maybe me saying I'm a bit, frustrated. It's the end. I need to let out some steam. Yes, I think I'm going to do that over the next few days. But what I mustn't do is start saying to myself, thinking about its future value, a painting by me before I've even started, because I think with the talent that I may have, it may become valuable, Shelley, but I must stop thinking about things like that because it does hold us back.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I never thought about that in the beginning, I never intended to do portraits, ever. Because, like I said, I'm not a contemporary artist. I've not been to an art school. And, and I was like learning to draw portraits alone without being spirit portraits. Oh, my good Lord, the expectations and pressures I've put on my own shoulders. Oh, no. But I started off, and it was actually at the college through the course The Delights of Colin Bates, Sandy Baker, Bill Thompson. It was one of those courses, and sorry if I've missed any of the other tutors, that encouraged it in me. And I did it with my fingers with acrylic. And I was quite blown away with the evidence that came with them. So I'm very forever grateful for encouraging me to do that, because then it gave me a little bit more courage and confidence to pursue it. So, and they were very organic, I have to say. And I didn't do them all in skin colour. There'd be all sorts of colours, but the colours were very evidential within the communication.
Yes.
So, and, that has evolved, and I do them with charcoal now because obviously paints are not appropriate to travel with and churches and so on. So I do it with charcoal, and I do them actually just purely in black and white now at the moment. And that's fascinating because, again, we're in a box. We think spirit art, portraits, because that's another one. You say spirit art, everybody, please, I don't want to upset anybody, but I'm just giving an expression. I think when you talk about spirit art, a lot of people think it's portraits, but actually you can do a visionary. You can do a communication, or a guide, or whichever way you want to put the intention, through vision, colour, through a tree. You can do a scene and it'll be evidential.
There are no rules.
No, exactly.
But except for make sure you've got a plastic sheet out. That's the only rule.
Yeah, yes. Make sure you got a penny on or you got your old clothes on, because you end up wearing it, trust me. And I do. But what I love when I do with charcoal at the moment, often I don't see the person that I'm about to draw. And again, I know why, because of my perfection head. Don't put me in that, will take me straight into that left brain. And it's the essence of them starts to form onto the paper. And I'll be like, and I do a communication. And I could be doing this, say it's a gentleman. That happened actually Friday night. And I'm sort of going, I've got this mom and dad with me, but I'm drawing the dad at the moment. But as I'm working through it, I said, no, it's changed now. I'm drawing the mum. And they said the process, they could see it. They could identify both spirit people within the art. And it just blows my mind. And another time, I've done it and it's like drawing it away and it was this lady's sister and da-da-da-da-da. And then I said, you can recognise your sister in this portrait. And before she could answer me, I went, no, actually, I correct that. It's your sister's daughter, so it'd be your niece you can see in the picture. She went, yeah, that's what I was about to say to you. And it changes. And I've had it where they can see both of the communicators in the portrait.
It's amazing. I think the magic that happens. And when you were saying as well about not sort of allowing and knowing your way to work, not getting the spirit person to sort of come through before you've started, because that puts you in the analytical mind. That's actually what I do even now with my mediumship. I don't want to pre-link, because if I pre-link, the information that's coming to me is then going, up to my brain. And then when I start doing my mediumship, I'm not even in the energy of spirit, because I'm relaying what's already come to me. So I'm out of the energy. So, but my spirit team understand now the best way to work with me, because I speak to them, and I had to have a reset with them a while ago and say, guys, I'm making this really hard. You're giving me a washing machine and I'm seeing curries, and I'm saying curries. I'm not making it easy here. You give me a postage stamp, I'll say a letter. So I had to say, look, we need to have a reset here, because I've been going wrong. Now, just give me what I need in the moment. Ideally, can my guide make sure that, you line someone up ready to go, but don't start letting them come over the, barrier, ideally, before I've got going. But there is something in that. You need to learn your way that it works at the end of the day. I want to ask, because before we run out of time, so colour in mediumship, I've done a lot of exercises over my time in my sort of earlier days of taking colour cards and things and doing a reading just based on a colour. But it is amazing. Firstly, colour, I must say, I'm very aware of what colours I've got around me, all time. Certain colours, I'm always told that I need blue at the moment, or blue. But, there's so much to even colour in a reading. So I guess, how can people start to develop their own understanding and how to use colour in their lives and their mediumship?
Well, that's an interesting one. Now, I do think it's a good idea to get a general knowledge of the healing properties, the meanings, definitions to colour. But me personally, I don't stick with that. I don't get stuck in this box. Now, everybody works in their own way, but I say find your own relationship with colour. How colour, to me, you can work with a certain colour with 4 different people and you'll get 4 different expressions of it, depending on the need.
You do have to be careful with that, because even looking into, I remember I was on a workshop for my mediumship very early days, and we were given a printout of what colours can mean. And then there's something even in how that's putting you in the analytical brain. Okay, yellow means this. Well, yellow could actually mean a bazillion different things depending on the feeling attached to yellow.
Exactly.
Red can mean passion. It can mean danger. It could mean anything depending on how that feels to you. And it's even funny.
In that moment, in that moment, in whatever intention of what you're using that colour for, whether it's psychic, healing, mediumistic. Yeah, definitely. So, and you've got to look, but you look at the different levels, like say psychically, for example, we're looking at the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. So they'll fit in somewhere within all of that. But if you get stuck into the definitions, you are still in that critical mind going, now red means, you're not with the feeling of the colour and all the expression of the spirit about that colour. When I talked about that opportunity I had at the college as a student, where I did a portrait in acrylic, I did that, I'll never forget it, portrait in blue and ochre yellow, which is not skin colour at all. And I don't remember.
Unless you're Marge Simpson.
Yeah, but It didn't look quite like that. It looked like a face portrait, spirit portrait. But as I was putting the blue on, I don't remember the whole contact, obviously, but I remember because it was one of them light bulb moments. And I was going, as I'm putting the blue on this gentleman, I know that his kidneys were failing. There was a problem with his kidneys. Now, often blue can be representative of healing. It can be of water and communication and so on. But that's where I got it. If I'd have been in my analytical mind, I've gone, oh, is he not good at talking? Or is it healing? Or is it? I didn't. I just instantly went, you would understand this problem that his kidneys are failing. It was a yes. And the yellow wasn't a bright yellow. It was an ochre yellow, which was like a mustardy yellow. And I said, and as I'm putting the yellow on, I said he had a problem with the liver. If I'm correct, he might have had liver cancer or cancer in the liver, but it's a long time ago. And I was like, that was a ka-ching moment for me as a student going, So
I let it flow. I didn't question it. I went with what I felt, and it made sense at the end.
Exactly, yes.
But sometimes mediumship, it doesn't make any sense at the end, and you have to just realise that that's not even for you to know. You know, it's we're so goddamn nosy, aren't we? Sometimes
we are. Well, we need to be curious anyway.
Yeah.
Intrigued, but like you say, sometimes we judge the evidence, and we're not the judge of the evidence. The recipient is. They know what touches them.
I'm very sensitive to colour, and I always have been, and light, actually. I've always been very sensitive. Honestly, if you put me in a Ryanair plane with that bright yellow and blue, honestly, I feel like I want to get out the emergency exit. There's something about the
it's the intensity, isn't it?
It is. Why would you paint your planes in that way? Why would you use those atrocious colours, to try? If I was designing planes, I'd want to use colours that are going to provoke, a relaxing feeling.
Yeah, because those colours they kind of stimulate, don't they? They kind of.
Well, that's why I won't fly Ryanair, because the one time I did, I thought the plane, it's just too much for me. And every 2 minutes, would you like a snack? Another on-time flight. I thought, I can't. I'm sensitive, even though I'm cabin crew at one point in my life. Because the plane, I find a very stressful environment, I must say, because you're all packed together, and if you're a sensitive person, the best thing I can do on a plane is put on a pair of noise-cancelling headphones and just try and relax. Funny enough, though, in my cabin crew days, I must admit there was a certain part of the plane I used to love to be in. The way to get there is turning left as you walk in, not right. That was a perk of the job back then, so we like that. Shelley, it's been wonderful to have you come on and talk about art. We've gone down a few rabbit holes, but I like that. That's the very nature of spiritualism. So today, do us the honour of leaving us on a final thought.
Final thought. Don't limit the limitless potential that who you are. We're not meant to fit in a box. I know we have to conform to a degree in life, but, be expressive. Even if it's not going to be art, be you, explore different avenues, give it a go, be expressive. Like we're saying, the idea of just slapping some paint on a canvas, why not? Just for the fun of it, have a good laugh. But, we're innovated and inspired through playfulness when we're happy and joyful, not when we're stressed, and one thing I definitely do say to people, especially when they're with the students, is, enjoy your development, not endure it. Learn from the challenges, the struggles, if you like, because there's a learning in all of that. There's a lesson in it. Look at it in a constructive but kind, positive way. How could I have got that better? Now I know. And then when you get it right, rejoice in that. Because how many times do we berate ourselves and forget about the golden moments, the precious moments that we've had in it? I'm sure, Jason, you can say this as much as me. I've done a service and enjoyed the service, but the one thing that I think stays with me in the car, not so much now, I will state, is the one thing I got wrong.
Oh, all the time. You know, you do a reading, I will beat myself up over the one bit of incorrect evidence.
Yeah.
And you know, you do that all the time in life. You don't stop to look at all the great things you do in a day. You'll beat yourself up over the one little thing that wasn't quite right.
And we forget the real beauty of what we do and the sacredness and the difference it makes. Because we become so like, I've got to improve, I've got to get this better. But if you've touched the soul of one person in that room and moved them, that's life-changing. And we must never forget that what part we play in that. I say to everybody, you are all a gift to this world. Each one has their own unique ability. We're not all the same for a reason. It'd be very boring if we was all the same. And, if it wasn't for us trying and developing and expressing the words of the Spirit wouldn't have a voice. There wouldn't be spirituality. There wouldn't be that balance between the material and spiritual. So to me, it's keep being you. Don't berate yourself so much. I always say, don't beat yourself up on my watch. No way.
Yes, you are a being of unlimited potential. And if you feel you can't do something, then realise that that's the ego. That's something that's happened in your past. That's a learned behaviour. That's a conditioning. And, start to step into whoever you want to be in your life.
Yeah. Because like you say, if we say we can't, we won't. But who says we can't? We're limitless.
Well, yes, and even if you're not bubbling with confidence, at least turn that no into a maybe. Let's not rule something out before we've even got going. So, Shelley, my darling, thank you for coming onto the Soul Sync.
Thank you for inviting me, Jason. It's always lovely and a pleasure.
Wasn't that such a lovely conversation? And maybe that's the little invitation I want to leave you with today, my darlings. Go and try something, paint something, write something, sit with your intuition. Have a go at something you've convinced yourself you're just no good at. And when that inner critic inevitably pops up and starts giving you its unsolicited opinion, tell it very lovingly to be quiet for 5 minutes. You don't need to be perfect at something to enjoy it. You don't need to know where it's going. You just need to give yourself permission to explore and experiment, because sometimes the things that bring us the most joy are the things we nearly talked ourselves out of trying. So go and play, my darlings. See what happens. And as always, thank you for spending time with me on the Soul Sync. Until next time, lots of love.